I'm Julie Barkey with this Senate update. A bill that is straightforward but necessary. That's how Senator John Hoffman described his bill, Senate File 1002, which would provide additional training to those in school settings who work with special needs students. Testimony included a young man with fetal alcohol syndrome and the difficulties he has encountered in school. So here's testimony from Monday's Senate E12 committee.
It requires that paraprofessionals working with students with disabilities be trained in the specific disability of the student and students with whom the paraprofessional works. It's real consistent with the adage that the unique and individualized needs of the child and the disability and how it affects their education. That's the premise of 94-142, and this just broadens that and says this is what we're going to do. For example, if a paraprofessional works with a child who lives with autism, then that paraprofessional should know something about autism and how relevant and have relevant training with that individual. If a paraprofessional works with children that live with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, then we expect the paraprofessional should know something about the FASD, or fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, and likewise have relevant training. Those are two examples of many. It goes on and on and on. For paraprofessionals who are unfamiliar with the disabilities of a child they work with can sometimes do more harm than good, because not knowing the unique and individualized needs of the child really is going against the grain of what the emphasis of special education services are. So with that, Mr. Chair and members, I would like to turn this over to Jonah Weinberg and then bring up Laura and Alex. So.
Thank you, Senator Hoffman. Welcome, Mr. Weinberg.
Thank you, Mr.
For each of the testifiers, please state your name for the tape.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jonah Weinberg, Executive Director at the Autism Society of Minnesota. Our organization has been serving Minnesota's autism community since 1971, and with more than 4 decades of experience in this area, we are certainly pleased that this bill is coming forward, because we really feel that it is going to help children with disabilities, whether it's autism or some other disability, to really get the benefit of the help that they need from the paraprofessional sent to assist them. As the Senator mentioned earlier, if a paraprofessional doesn't really understand autism or the other disability they may be assisting a child with, they can really work against their progress and actually cause them more detriment than help. And to know that's really not to blame the paraprofessional, because we believe that they certainly intend to do their best, but without that crucial information, they can work against themselves and actually cause themselves frustration as much as the child. And we believe this is an important opportunity. I believe the committee has been provided with this handout of low or no cost training opportunities on these various disabilities, and the Autism Society is very pleased to play a part in this and be supportive in any way we can.
Thank you. And we'll hold on any questions, comments until the presentation is concluded. Welcome.
Hi. Alex Miller. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I am so grateful for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. My name, you would never guess this, but I have neurological damage from prenatal alcohol exposure. This is the 25th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The ADA prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities for employment, transportation, public accommodation, communications, and governmental activities. We have come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. For example, all of us expect the same high-quality education as our peers, and we need the pairs that support us to understand our unique needs. This year, House File 1237 and Senate File 1002 proposes legislation that will require paraprofessionals in our school systems to have specific training on the unique needs of the kids they support. No one should assume what I'm going through. In my experience, the teachers and pairs who understood me were more flexible and more willing to work side by side with all the students with special needs. The pairs who understood my unique challenges made me feel like I could do well and motivated me to do better. The pairs who didn't made me feel like I was the weak link, or I wasn't trying, or I didn't care. It is frustrating because I want to explain to them what I am feeling, and they just treat me like I'm trying to get out of doing the work. The pairs who understood were more like another parent. They were there for me and pushed me to the best I could do. They wanted me to do well. There should be a bigger view of learning abilities of all students. There is more than one type of animal in the jungle. You wouldn't expect a fish to climb a tree, would you? Instead of just telling us what to do, the parents who understood and cared and understood our needs made learning more fun. All educators should have training on specific needs because it will help them teach students of all challenges, identified or not. Looks can be deceiving. On some days, I may look fine on the outside, but the inside may be a total mess. For me, it was hard for me to get the assignments written in my planner, things put in my backpack that I needed, and to get those assignments completed and turned in. The parents who understood my situation were patient, gave me the support I needed, and they were there to help me. They understood that some days I was firing on all cylinders and everything was fine. They also understood that other days nothing was connecting, and they stepped in to help. They were like training wheels on a bike. If I leaned too far to one side, they were there to correct me and to also teach me how to ride on my own someday. As a senior in high school, I can look back and easily identify the parents and teachers who understood my challenges and cared enough to help. Training on specific to fetal alcohol spectrum disorders or whatever disorders they are dealing with will help our educators understand our needs. Understanding leads to compassion. Compassion leads to action and support. At some point, every educator will teach someone with an FASD. Every para will help a student with FASD. It doesn't take much training at all to make a big difference in how they work with us. For those of us living with a disability, a positive experience in school can lead to a positive experience in life. Our early experiences in school can help to set the direction of our entire educational experience. Please support this legislation that will help give paraprofessionals the basic training that will make all the difference in our school experiences. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well done, Mr. Miller. Next.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning. I'm Laura Block. I'm a board member at the Minnesota Organization on Fetal Alcohol Syndrome, and I'm Alex's mom. You can imagine how proud I am of him. He's handsome, he's bright, he's charming, he's happy, he's engaging, he's a gifted athlete, and he's a loyal friend. You could spend a lot of time with Alex and not have any idea that he has a significant disability. Alex started receiving help from paras in the classroom in the 3rd grade. Most, if not all, of the paras that he's worked with have been very caring people and wanted to do the best for him. Not all, however, understood the unique challenges that he faces having a fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. For example, it's common with FASD for the corpus callosum in the center of the brain to be damaged. That's what connects the right side to the left side. And so what this means is that Alex may know the information, but the ability to transfer that and recall it on the day that he needs it, for example, a test day, it may not happen. When Alex was younger, we'd work on spelling words. We'd practice, he'd have them all down cold, let him go play, he'd come back an hour later and I'd say, let's just quick review these words. And it was like he'd never seen them before. That connection was lost. I knew the information was in there, I knew he knew these words. He just couldn't recall it. The odd thing was 6 weeks later, I'd find that same list and say, oh, hey Alex, spell this word. It was right there. It was right there. Alex's initial diagnosis was inattentive ADD. That's how his disability looks in the classroom. A para who doesn't know what I just told you about FASD may think that Alex is just distracted, may move him to a quiet corner of the room and continue to press him to come up with the information. That can create a lot of frustration for the para and for Alex. A common statement that he hears in the classroom many times a day from paras, from teachers is, I know that you know this. While that may be true, knowing it and recalling it and accessing it are different things. A para who understands this unique challenge to FASD may choose instead to say, I know you've worked hard on this, let's just set it aside and come back and try again in an hour, or try again tomorrow. If Alex were deaf, no one would expect him to follow verbal directions without some kind of accommodation. Alex's disability, however, is largely invisible. and it's often misinterpreted as attitude or laziness, and I assure you that is not the case. Alex works harder than most of the students I know. A para without training may actually escalate his challenges without realizing it. When those connections are having a hard time being made, and then you add stress and frustration and pressure, and I want to perform and I want to please that para into the equation, it only makes it worse. A woman recently came to MOFAS frustrated over the same training issue. She is a para in northern Minnesota. She'd just gotten a new student with a physical disability and received training specific to that child's physical disability. She herself has a child with FASD. When she requested that same training opportunity for the para who works with her child, she was told that if the para wanted training, she'd have to get it on her own time. The training that we're asking for does not need to be cumbersome or expensive. Many of the organizations supporting this legislation are already providing no-cost or low-cost training, both in person and online. As a volunteer, I was at Minnetonka Middle School 2 weeks ago providing a 45-minute training on FASD as part of their teacher training in-service program. Last week, Alex and I spoke to a district-wide group of early childhood special needs educators. All of this was at no cost to the districts involved. We choose to do this because we know that even a little bit of training makes a world of difference in the classroom. I ask you to support this legislation for Alex and for all the kids who depend on the help from paras to get through their school experience. Thanks for this consideration.
Thank you very much, Ms. Black, for sharing your story. Senator Hoffman.
Mr. Chair and members, thank you. This is something that is needed. It was had huge bipartisan support in the House, and I'd sure like to have this passed and referred to possible inclusion into our omnibus bill.
Okay, we do have David Aaron listed for testifying, and possibly others that I don't have.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I did not have that name in front of me, so I apologize.
No,
for
we'll proceed
getting ahead of
and
the game.
then open it up further. Welcome, Mr. Aaron.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is David Aaron. I am a staff attorney at Education Minnesota. I'm also a former special education teacher. I'll make my comments brief and just say that Education Minnesota wholeheartedly supports this legislation, and we want to thank Senator Hoffman for authoring it, and thank you, Alex, for testifying today. We often say that special education teachers are the most important people in students' lives, but that for students with disabilities, paraprofessionals are the most important people, or one of the most important people in students' lives. At Education Minnesota, we have the privilege of representing a large number of the special education paraprofessionals in this state, and our members often tell us that they are not receiving training or sometimes even knowledge of the disabilities of the students that they work with. In many cases, I've heard from paraprofessionals who don't even know the disability of the students that they work with before they begin the school year. Now, that's not true in every case. Some districts do an excellent job of providing training and making paraprofessionals aware, but those practices should be required across the state. So we wholeheartedly support this, and we believe that the training and time to receive information about each student's disability is crucial to help paraprofessionals fulfill the vital role that they play in the instruction of students with disabilities.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that'd like to address the committee? Ms. Kelleher. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. My name is Grace Kelleher, and I represent the Minnesota School Boards Association. And we have, I hope it's just a wording change. If you look at the bottom of 2.30, if you read the language going forward, our concern is that this sets a really high bar for paraprofessionals immediately upon employment. Where it says before immediately upon employment, and then if you turn over to really know the child's basic needs, and paraprofessionals, a lot like special ed teachers, are rare finds, and it might be nice to
Ms. Kelleher, could you restate the line?
Okay, if you start at 230, for
Okay.
all paraprofessionals employed to work in programs whose role in part is to provide direct support.
Okay.
So then you go down to 1, before or immediately upon employment. And that immediate standard is a very high bar. Whose role is to provide direct support to.
And Ms. Kelleher, that's current law
I-
in the sub.
But we added language,
Yes, in C.
right. And I just want to make sure the bar in this bill is not too high for us to meet.
Senator Hoffman.
Mr. Chair and members, thank you, Ms. Kelleher, for pointing that out. This doesn't change the scope. This just is very consistent with the original intent of 94-142 and highlight, I want to look at, if you look at line 3.5 down to 3.7, that same language is used in federal law and has been since 1975. So we are now just being consistent with what we know we should be doing within the classroom. This is no cost. There's a bunch of information out there that are specific, and it's just, once again, highlighting that students with special education needs or related services needs must have folks that understand what their unique individualized needs are. I think it's just very a bill that gets us consistent with federal law, Mr. Chair and members.